He was quiet and polite. A chocolate factory worker who went to church with his grandmother. Nobody suspected a thing. But on one July night in 1991, police walked into apartment 213. And what they found? 4 severed heads in the kitchen, 7 skulls in the bedroom, a 57-gallon drum dissolving 3 human torsos in acid. For 13 years he had been hiding in plain sight, and he almost got away with it. This is the story of Jeffrey Dahmer. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, May 21st, 1960. A boy was born into what looked like an ordinary American family. A chemist father, a mother who stayed at home, a quiet house on a quiet street. From the outside, everything seemed perfectly normal. But inside that house, something was deeply wrong. Jeffrey Dahmer's mother suffered from severe anxiety and depression. She spent days in bed, barely present, barely functioning. His father was consumed by his studies, away from home for long stretches of time. And when he was home, his wife demanded every second of his attention. Jeffrey was left alone, invisible, forgotten. He learned very early that nobody was coming for him. At 4 years old, Jeffrey underwent surgery to correct a double hernia. It was a painful and invasive procedure. And after that surgery, the happy, energetic child was gone. Something had changed. Something had shifted deep inside. By first grade, his teacher described him as reserved and withdrawn. She noted in his report card that she believed he was being neglected at home. Nothing was done. Nobody followed up. The warning was filed away and forgotten, just like Jeffrey. As Jeffrey grew older, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. He developed a deep fascination with dead animals. He would collect roadkill from the streets, bring the carcasses to the tool shed behind the house, dissect them, study what was inside, and preserve their bones in jars. He once nailed a dog's body to a tree and mounted its skull on a wooden cross deep in the woods behind his home. His father, a trained chemist, actually sat down with his son one evening and taught him how to strip flesh from bone using bleach and acid solutions. He thought Jeffrey was showing scientific curiosity, a father and son bonding moment. He had no idea what he was really teaching him. By high school, Jeffrey had discovered something else, something that confused him, frightened him. He was gay, in a household already fractured by constant fighting. This was something he could never say out loud, so he buried it deep inside. And in that darkness, the fantasies began. Fantasies about control, about dominance, about possessing someone completely, permanently. He started drinking at 14 years old. Hard liquor, hidden inside the lining of his school jacket, smuggled into his locker. He drank before class, during class, after class. Alcohol was the only thing that quieted the thoughts. For a while. May 1978. Jeffrey graduated from high school. His parents divorced shortly after. His mother packed her things, took his younger brother David, and left. His father moved out, and Jeffrey was left completely alone in the family home. He was 18 years old. 3 weeks later, on a warm summer afternoon, Jeffrey was driving down a rural road when he spotted a hitchhiker. His name was Stephen Hicks, 18 years old, shirtless in the summer heat, heading to a rock concert. Jeffrey pulled over, offered him a ride, and suggested they stop at his place first, just for a few beers. Stephen agreed. He had no idea what that decision would cost him. For hours they talked. They drank. They listened to music. And Jeffrey felt something he had never felt before. Connection. And then Stephen stood up and said it was time to leave. Something inside Jeffrey snapped. He later said, "I didn't want him to go. I just wanted to keep him there." He grabbed a dumbbell, struck Stephen from behind, then used the handle to strangle him until there was silence. Jeffrey Dahmer had committed his first murder. He was 18 years old, alone in his parents' house, and nobody knew. Nobody came. The next morning, he dragged the body to the basement and dismembered it. He buried the remains in the backyard. Days later, he dug them back up. He stripped the flesh using acid, the same technique his father had taught him. He crushed the bones with a sledgehammer and scattered the fragments in the woods. Then he threw the knife into a nearby river. Stephen Hicks was listed as a missing person. His family searched for years. They never found him, because there was nothing left to find. After the murder, Jeffrey's father discovered he had been living alone. He pushed him to attend college. Jeffrey enrolled at Ohio State University and achieved a GPA of 0.45 before dropping out after just 3 months. His father then pushed him to join the army. Jeffrey enlisted, trained as a combat medic, and was stationed in West Germany. During his service, 2 fellow soldiers later came forward claiming Jeffrey had drugged and assaulted them while they slept. In 1981, the army discharged him for alcohol abuse. He drifted to Miami, worked at a sandwich shop, lost his job, and slept on the beach. Eventually, he called his father for help. By late 1981, he was sent to live with his grandmother in West Allis, Wisconsin, a suburb of Milwaukee. For a while, things seemed stable. He attended church with her, helped around the house, and even found a job at the Milwaukee Ambrosia chocolate factory. But the fantasies never stopped. They grew darker, more urgent. Jeffrey began visiting gay bathhouses where he developed a terrifying new habit. He would crush sleeping pills into powder, slip them into men's drinks, wait until they were unconscious, and assault them while they slept. He did this at least 12 times. The bathhouse eventually discovered what he was doing and banned him permanently. Jeffrey was not upset. He simply adapted. He started renting hotel rooms instead, on his own terms, with no witnesses. The killing was only a matter of time. In November 1987, 9 years after his first murder, Jeffrey Dahmer killed again. His method was now precise. He would visit gay bars, find a young man, and offer him $50. Come back to my place. Just for drinks. Just for photos. He would spike their drinks with sleeping pills, wait until they were unconscious, and strangle them. He killed in his grandmother's basement, victim after victim. She complained about the smell. He told her it was spoiled meat. She believed him. In 1988, Jeffrey lured a 13-year-old boy to his grandmother's house. He drugged him and assaulted him. He was caught. He was arrested. He stood before a judge, and the judge gave him 5 years probation and a work release permit so he could keep his job. No prison time. No psychiatric evaluation. Just, go home, Jeffrey. He was back on the streets within days. And within months, he killed again. The system had every opportunity to stop what was coming. It chose to look away. In May 1990, Jeffrey Dahmer moved into his own apartment, 924 North 25th Street, apartment 213, Milwaukee. Rent was cheap. The neighborhood was rough. Neighbors kept to themselves. From the outside, he was just a quiet tenant. Polite, unremarkable. But inside apartment 213, he was building something. A 57-gallon drum in the bedroom corner filled with acid, dissolving bodies. A freezer stocked with severed heads and human flesh. A filing cabinet filled with painted and bleached skulls. And 74 Polaroid photographs documenting every stage of every murder. Between May 1990 and July 1991, he murdered 12 more men. Accelerating. 1 a month. Then faster. He photographed his victims. He preserved their skulls. He kept their hearts in the refrigerator. He cooked their flesh. And he ate it. He later said eating them made him feel that they would always be a part of him, that they could never truly leave. Neighbors complained about the smell. The building manager called. Jeffrey told him his freezer had broken. Spoiled meat. The manager never visited, never checked, and the killing continued. But Jeffrey Dahmer had a plan, a vision, something he had been working toward with every single murder. He called it his altar. 10 skulls, arranged carefully on a long table. Cleaned, bleached, some painted, some coated in enamel, and a black chair positioned in the center where Jeffrey planned to sit, surrounded by his victims, and finally, feel powerful. He told investigators later, "When I could sit in that chair, I would finally feel powerful." He was also keeping something else, something nobody knew about. Every morning, Jeffrey Dahmer would get dressed, pack his bag, and head to work at the Ambrosia chocolate factory. Inside that bag was a locked metal carrying case, and inside that case was the mummified skull of one of his victims. He kept it in his work locker every single day, right next to his colleagues' lunch boxes. When asked about it later, he said simply, "That is how strong the compulsion was. I wanted to keep something of the person with me. Always." By 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer's obsession had reached a terrifying new level. Killing was no longer enough. Keeping skulls was no longer enough. He wanted something more. A living companion. Someone who would stay. Someone who could never leave. Someone completely under his control. So he experimented. He began drilling holes into the skulls of unconscious living victims, and injecting hydrochloric acid directly into their brains. He hoped to chemically destroy their will, to create what he called a zombie, a breathing body with no thoughts, no resistance, no desire to leave. One victim woke up after the procedure, looked at Jeffrey, and said, "I have a headache. What time is it?" He had no idea there was a hole drilled into his skull. Jeffrey was briefly excited. He thought it had worked. Then he drugged the victim again and strangled him. None of the experiments succeeded. Every victim died, but he never stopped trying. May 27, 1991. A 14-year-old boy stumbled out of apartment 213 into the cold Milwaukee night. Naked, bleeding, barely conscious, with a hole drilled into his skull and acid injected into his brain. 3 women found him on the street and called 911 immediately. When police arrived, Jeffrey Dahmer walked outside. Calm, composed, smiling. He told the officers the boy was his 19-year-old boyfriend, that he had simply drunk too much, that it was just a lover's quarrel. He even showed them Polaroid photographs as proof. The officers believed him. They escorted the boy back inside apartment 213, told Jeffrey to take good care of his friend, and left. The women who had called 911 pleaded with the officers, begged them to listen. They were told to butt out. Police radio recordings later revealed the officers had been laughing, joking about reuniting lovers. Inside the apartment, Jeffrey Dahmer injected a second dose of acid into that boy's brain and murdered him within minutes of the police leaving. He later said he could not believe his luck. It made him feel completely untouchable. This boy was the younger brother of a victim Jeffrey had assaulted years earlier. The same family, twice. He went on to kill 4 more people after that night. July 22, 1991. Tracy Edwards, 32 years old, agreed to go back to apartment 213 for $100. Just for drinks. Just for photos. The moment he stepped inside, he knew something was wrong. The smell was suffocating. Boxes of hydrochloric acid were sitting in plain sight on the floor. A television was playing The Exorcist 3 on repeat. Jeffrey placed a handcuff on one of Tracy's wrists and pulled out a knife. He began rocking back and forth, whispering, chanting, "I am going to eat your heart." Tracy Edwards made a decision. He stayed calm. He waited. He watched. And the moment Jeffrey's attention drifted, he punched him as hard as he could directly in the face. And ran. He burst through the front door, sprinted down the street, handcuffs still dangling from his wrist. He flagged down 2 police officers and told them a freak just tried to kill him. The officers entered apartment 213 and asked Jeffrey for the handcuff key. He pointed toward the bedroom. One officer opened the drawer and froze. Inside were Polaroid photographs. Dozens of them. Dismembered bodies. Decapitated heads. Step-by-step documentation of every murder. The officer walked to his partner, held up the photographs, and said, "These are real." Jeffrey Dahmer lunged toward them. He was wrestled to the ground and arrested. July 22, 1991. 13 years after his first kill, the shadow files were finally opened. Over 60 hours of interrogation, Jeffrey Dahmer confessed to everything. 17 murders spanning 13 years. Calmly, in precise detail, without hesitation. He described every victim, every method, every motive. He told investigators, "The killing was not the objective. I just wanted complete control, to possess them permanently, and never be left alone again." Inside apartment 213, police recovered 4 severed heads in the kitchen, 7 skulls, some painted, some bleached, 2 human hearts wrapped in plastic, an entire torso in the freezer, 3 decomposing torsos in the acid drum, and 74 Polaroid photographs documenting it all. At trial, Jeffrey pleaded guilty but insane. The jury disagreed. On February 15, 1992, he was found guilty on 15 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms. In prison, he converted to Christianity. He told his mother in one of their last phone calls, "I don't want to be here anymore, but I know I am too dangerous to ever be free." 3 weeks later, on November 28, 1994, a fellow inmate beat Jeffrey Dahmer to death with a 20-inch metal bar in a prison bathroom. He was 34 years old. He did not fight back. He did not make a sound. 17 young men never came home. Most of their families received no remains to bury. No closure. No goodbye. Jeffrey Dahmer got away with murder for 13 years, Not because he was invisible, but because the people around him chose not to look. A teacher who noticed said nothing. A grandmother who smelled it believed his lies. A judge who caught him sent him home. Police officers who stood inside his apartment walked away laughing. 17 chances to stop him. 17 times the world looked away. The Shadow Files. Every case has a shadow. We find it. Jeffrey Dahmer was not born a monster. He was created by silence, by neglect, by a system that failed at every single turn. But none of that excuses what he chose to do. Because in the end, he made those choices himself. The question that remains is one the world still cannot answer. How many more like him are hiding in plain sight right now? Tell us in the comments. Was Jeffrey Dahmer born this way? Or was he made? Subscribe to the Shadow Files. Because some files were never meant to stay buried.